Hello, BookTube. I tore into the morning's mail ravenously like a hungry badger. And it was only when I was a few books in that I realized, oh wait, you're supposed to do this in company with everybody else. So, sorry for that. I have a couple of packages that I want to open for you, and I have some books I want to show you from packages that are already ripped open. So we'll do those first. We'll do the ones that are already ripped open first, just because these might interest you. There's one new book and two paperback releases, reprints from last year. The new book seems intriguing to me. It's another historical novel in just a tsunami of historical novels that we've seen so far this year. It comes out in September, and it is by Karen Campbell, and it's called The Sound of the Hours. Very nice cover, The Sound of the Hours. The newest historical novel by Scottish writer Karen Campbell is about an Italian girl and an American soldier who are brought together in a sweeping and romantic novel about love, loss, and conflict in Nazi-occupied Italy. Trapped in the Scottish-Italian community of Barga in Tuscany as war rages along the Gothic line, Vittoria Guidi doesn't know where her allegiances should lie, with her Scots-Italian father or her fascist mother, with Mussolini or her king, with the life she wants or the life she is told to live. As the Germans occupy the mountains around Barga and the American Buffalo soldiers draw near, loyalties are tested and families are torn apart. Frank Chappell, a young black soldier fighting for a country that refuses him the vote, is unlike anyone Vita has ever met. In the chaos, they find each other, but can their growing love defy prejudice and war? And I thought there are a couple of elements there that are very intriguing. I mean, they're mechanistic. But I don't mind that at all in my fiction. I love the fact that the two protagonists are split right down the middle of their own hearts. I think that's just fascinating. I'm curious to know. I mean, I won't read this for a bit yet because this is September. I've got a ton of stuff to do before I near now. But I'm curious to know whether or not Karen Campbell will come up with a convincing way for either of these two people to look past all of their own issues, to see the other person as even a person, much less a potential romantic interest. That's going to take some fancy dancing. I'm curious to know. It can be done. I'm curious to know how it will be done. Then this next one is a book I actually mentioned yesterday. This is the paperback release, which comes out in May. This is another Mark Billingham novel. I mentioned him as an author, a police procedural thriller author who will not fail you. And he has a long string of books. So if that's something that you want, a new author who has a large body of predictably good work that you can just mine from beginning to end, and also the thrill, I feel it as much as anybody else does, the thrill of having an author to wait for, of having, you've got a new year, you're going to get new books from a certain group of authors. I have a huge group of authors like that, authors who almost never fail me in many genres. And that's always fun. And I mentioned Mark Billingham as an author you should add to that list. And this is the paperback of his last Tom Thorne novel, The Killing Habit, which has a person on the cover and an emissary of Satan on the cover. And I told you about this a little yesterday, but let me refresh your memory, because this was a particularly good one. I mean, as you know, if you follow authors who write in series, every once in a while, on an unpredictable basis, they will write one that's particularly good. No slight against the rest of the stuff they do. It's just sometimes the light of inspiration will be on a book of theirs, and that was true with this one. This book brings together favorite wildcard detective Tom Thorne and straight-laced D.I. Nicola Tanner on a pair of lethally high-stakes cases. We've all heard about the signs: coldness, cruelty, mistreatment of animals. D.I. Tom Thorne knows the psychological profile of a psychopath all too well, so when pets start disappearing on suburban London streets, he sees a chance to stop a future murderer. Others are less convinced, so Thorne relies on D.I. Nicola Tanner to help him solve the case before the culprit starts hunting people. The journey brings them face to face with a killer who will tear their lives apart. And boy, oh boy, does it work. It really works. This is another one of the ones that we missed squealing about when the package was ripped open. But this comes out in late May. the Tom Thorne novels are extremely hospitable to new readers. You will be up to speed in about 10 pages. so you don't have to worry about that. There are many books before this. With any luck, there will be many books after this. But you don't have to worry about jumping right in. And this was a good one. And then this next one, some of you may remember from last year. I'm pretty sure that we saw at least one copy of this. This comes out in early May. This is the paperback of My Ex-Life by Stephen Macaulay. Which now the paperback pub sheet says that this was named the best book of the year by NPR and by Shelf Awareness. And it's now out in paperback. David Hedges is on the wrong side of someone else's midlife crisis. His longtime boyfriend has left him for an older man. His best friend is trying to sell his Ocean View Bay Area rental out from under him. And the privileged students he helps write college admission essays aren't getting any less bratty. Over on the East Coast, things aren't any easier for Julie Fisk. Ever since her second husband left, she's been renting out rooms in her rambling house to Airbnb to make ends meet and struggling to get her daughter Mandy to care about the college application process. Oh, and she keeps meaning to quit smoking pot just after this one last joint. And when one day Mandy tells a lie to convince her dad that she and Julie are doing just fine without him, Mom's ex, David Hedges, is helping her write a winning college essay. This lie sends David across the country to move in with Julie and to remember what brought them together so many years ago. But will going back be enough to give them a fresh start to move forward? And that plot description will, those of you who are familiar with contemporary fiction, will know right away the twist that is going to happen 2/3 of the way through this book. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I thought it was a companionable read. I didn't object to it in any way. I know that's not exactly glowing praise. It was well done. If the plot strikes you, if the plot makes you do pinwheels, then probably that's the book for you. But anyway, those were the ones that we missed. I didn't miss them, but you missed them. And now we'll do two that we didn't miss. Two packages that we can tear open together. So let's see what this first one is. Okay, this is unknown to me. This is Lake Union Publishing. They are a literary thriller type arm of the vast Amazon publishing empire, and this is going to be a $14 paperback. Great, fantastic. This is by Anne LeClaire, and it's called The Orchid Sister, and it has flowers on the cover. Let's see here. The people you love are taken away from you. That's what Maddie DeMarco learned when she survived the plane crash that killed her parents. Contemporary fiction is absolutely full to the attic with plane crash survivors. 15 years later, the scars remain, and the ones no one can see are the hardest to heal. Since the accident, Maddie's avoided the unpredictable and uncaring outside world, including any relationships, except for the one with her devoted older sister, Kat, who has always been there for her. When Maddie meets handsome pilot Jack Maroney, she meets a pilot. I don't know if you remember, but in the last paragraph we learned that her parents died in a plane crash. She finally begins to let down her guard, but just as quickly her hope and trust are once again shattered when a plane crash forces her to revisit her traumatic past. Maddie turns to her sister for comfort and guidance, only to realize that Kat is missing, and when Kat is found, it turns out that all along Kat has been an airplane. No, she's missing. The missing will involve a plane, and Maddie will have to be on a plane, and the denouement will take place on a plane. And do you people wonder why I make fun of this stuff? Well, you wonder why I make fun of this stuff. A, she's the sole survivor of a plane crash that kills her parents. B, she withdraws from the world entirely. No relationships of any kind. C, the first and only relationship she has after that is with a plane pilot. It's just... Well, this is due on May 7th. I will dutifully read it. I will see. It may surprise me. You never know. It's just I mean, we're 1 month away. It's almost May. We're 1 month away from the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the largest amphibious operation in the history of mankind, in which wave after wave after wave of young men who could only be called heroes jumped off troop transports and waded through cold water onto beaches ringed with machine gun nests in order to liberate the continent of Europe from the worst dictator it had ever known. Or, well, you see, I'm going to have her be a plane crash survivor. I won't explain how. Killed both her parents. They had a thing about planes. Now she has a thing about planes and everybody else. I'm going to have her withdraw from the world. Then I want her to get back in the world, pulled in by a relationship with, a plane pilot. Oh, but then he's going to die in a plane crash. And then her sister's going to go missing. And it's going to involve a plane. You've got the one on the one hand, a wave after wave after wave of young, terrified heroes liberating Europe, the real Europe, from the worst dictator it had ever had, a real dictator, real lives, the grandparents and great-grandparents of people you actually know that really happened, versus... Anyway, let's just do this last one. We'll do this last one and then we'll be done. I don't know why you people put up with me. I don't. So, okay, I think we saw this one already. This one comes out in early July, and it has a cover blurb by Lee Child called "Quinn Coulson is my kind of guy. I'd follow him anywhere," and it's by Ace Atkins. It's called "The Shameless." Very nice looking thing, The Shameless. I can't remember if we saw this on this channel or not. This is a series. Let me read you about this one. The Quinn Coulson series from New York Times bestselling author Ace Atkins wins more praise and more fans with every installment. And this is the 9th one in the series. As the story begins, former Army Ranger Quinn Coulson is just settling into married life with Maggie Powers, a veteran ER nurse recovering from an abusive first marriage. Although things seem relatively calm at the moment, the violence, political chicanery, and drug and human trafficking that plague his native Tibulla County in northern Mississippi are always churning right below the surface. This time, they emerge with the reopening of a 20-year-old case of a teenager's apparent suicide. Back in 1997, the ravaged body of missing Tibiha? Is it Tibiha? I remember that it's Tibiha. Maybe not. I'm going to say Tibiha High School student Brandon Taylor was found near his hunting rifle in the vast pine woods surrounding Quinn's hometown of Jericho. The county sheriff at the time, Quinn's disgraced uncle Hamp Beckett, concluded that the death was self-inflicted. But now Maggie, who was once Brandon's girlfriend, is receiving anonymous letters alleging that his death was anything but a lone act of a desperate individual, that it was in fact a monstrous crime committed to cover up other heinous atrocities. The arrival in town of 2 young female journalists from New York City only increases the pressure on Quinn. Tashi Coleman and Jessica Torres, the producers of the podcast called Thin Air, have been tipped off that Hamp Beckett's handling of Brandon's death was questionable, to say the least. Furthermore, as they soon discover, Beckett had a long history of shielding his nephew from the consequences of his many youthful indiscretions. Tashi and Jessica have many questions. Where are the records of the case? What happened to the gay teacher who was suspected by many people of having been involved? And how did Quinn survive being lost in those woods at 10 years of age when Brandon couldn't? And it goes on from there. I remember reading one other book in this series. This is book number 9, but I don't think you're going to need to worry about that. I remember reading one other book in this series, and this author has a tick. Yes, he's very good with dialogue. He's very good with action, hence the blurb by Lee Child, who's no slouch at action himself and probably reads it for that. And action is difficult to do. If you've ever tried it, writing an action scene that's more than a paragraph long is exhausting. It's tough to do well. And this author can do that. But he has a thing. Those things are good. Those are good skills for a thriller writer. But this guy also has a thing. He likes to pile on and refold. He likes to origami his plot. His plots are a joy because they are so top-heavy. They are so intricate with tendrils turning here and there and folding back on themselves. I can just picture him. I don't know anything about Ace Atkins whatsoever. And I don't think I'm told anything about Ace Atkins. I don't think I need to know anything about him. But I can just picture, well, actually, we do have a paragraph. He's author of 24 books, including 9 Quinn Coulson novels, the first of which, The Ranger and The Lost Ones, were nominated for Edgar Award for Best Novel. He lives with his family in Oxford, Mississippi. And I can picture him. I don't know anything about him, but I can picture him coming up with the bare bones of the plot for one of his books, and then just pacing the floors of his house at night, complicating that scene, and then complicating it again, and then complicating it again, and moving the tendrils backwards and forwards in time and all along the plot. It's quite enjoyable. So this comes out in July. I don't know if I'll get around to reading this advance copy right away, but I know already that, I mean, this author is not going to write, a month in the country. I know already that I can recommend this author. And this seems to be, from what I can tell, a bigger push on the part of his publisher to get him to a wider audience. And that might mean, I won't know until I read it, but sometimes that means that the people who were initially connected with this book, reading the drafts, reading the finished copy, that sort of thing, feel that it's that it's ready for a bigger audience. Sometimes that is the case. I've seen it happen with a few other writers. So one way or another, it's July, so I will get to it soon, but probably I will wait for the finished copy. But anyway, that was an interrupted mail haul. I interrupted it myself. So we have The Shameless by Ace Atkins. The one problem that I had with the previous book that I read, the previous, what's his name again? Quinn Coulson, is that I got the impression that Quinn should have been younger. Somehow, Ace Atkins should have made him younger. He's young anyway, but I think he should have been even younger. I think this character should be in his 20s. I don't know if that's a function of how the author writes him, or the situations, or just the vibe. But one way or another, the one other book that I read, I really enjoyed. I wonder if they list it, so I can tell which one it was. Because it wasn't the first one. I didn't read The Ranger. I think I read the Forsaken. But one way or another, I will let you know, although I do recommend that previous book. And then The Orchid Sister. Best not to read it on your plane. then My Ex-Life by Stephen Macaulay. Hapless man meets hapless woman. If you think that means, anyway, a little bit programmatic, but Macaulay has an audience for that. Then The Killing Habit by Mark Billingham, 100% programmatic, but terrific, terrific. And The Sound of the Hours by Karen Campbell, a historical novel in which a conflicted young woman in Italy begins a troublesome romance with a black U.S. serviceman. Where it seems to me that they will both have all sorts of conflicting motives. That sounds fascinating. So I will get to it, not anytime soon. But anyway, that's the mail haul that you almost missed. And now I'll wrap things up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.